Hi, everyone. This is Podcast Playground, and today we present how to monetize your podcast. And in this short little video, I'm going to share 30 ways to monetize your existing podcast today. I can't stress this enough. If you're starting out, you're going to have to get a little more creative, but if you've got a podcast, here's how you monetize it today. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is sponsorships and advertisements. Now, this might seem like a pie in the sky thing, but if you've got a good podcast and you've got some existing ratings, you can find through either agencies or on your own, you can find partners that will support you and think about your podcast. What is it about? And what are the tools you recommend or you use to get the results that you talk about in your podcast? So, for example, if you're a podcast for small businesses, maybe you want to look at accounting software. The world of financial technology or fintech is ripe with potential sponsorships or advertisers. So that's the first way to monetize a podcast. Now, the second thing is affiliate marketing, and a lot of people do this. Either you can do it on your own or you can do it through more sophisticated channels. But for example, you can use Amazon, and if you have a podcast about books, you could put affiliate links in your show notes where people could click to buy the book you're talking about. So think about your audience, think about the things they might want to buy or they should buy based on what you share, and how can you help them do that. Now, 3 is probably my favorite on this slide because what we can do is have our generic content that we share with the world at large. So for example, I'm sharing this video. It is fun, it's high quality, I hope you get some value out of it, but at the end of the day, it's just teaching you what you need to learn and where you need to go. It's not teaching you exactly how to do it. So I have premium content on each and every one of these topics on ways to monetize a podcast. So what you can do is offer exclusive content or bonus episodes or ad-free content for a subscription fee. More on that as we go. Now, number 4, this is dependent on the nature of your show, the size of your show, but you could consider crowdfunding and donations. There are platforms like Patreon, Substack, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. I actually like that one, Buy Me a Coffee, to receive support from your listeners. And again, Spotify has a way to do this as well, but instead of having it as a subscription, you say to people, if you like this episode, here's how you donate. Now, selling merchandise, this is probably one of my least favorites, not because it's not the best. It's just if you sell merchandise, for example, maybe you have a t-shirt for your show or you have mugs or stickers, anytime you add a physical component, then you need to work on logistics. Now, there are companies out there that handle logistics. I promise you, you don't want to be in the business of buying bulk mugs and then shipping them out one by one as people order. Unless that's really your dream, stick to digital content as much as possible. However, if you've got a big following and it's something your audience is really passionate about, create things. I have a couple of friends who run podcasts and they wear hats. And they every time they have a different episode, they change the saying on their hat so people kind of see it as part of the tribe, part of the brand. You could have an option on your website where they can order a hat from you. Now, we don't do this enough, but I feel like live shows or events are a huge way of building engagement. We want to give our fans something to do. And, for example, if you have 10 episodes on a theme, maybe you have a workshop or a live event or a retreat where your speakers can provide some content and your community comes together. Special events are a fun way to add revenue. Now, we talked about offering online courses or workshops very briefly. If you've got a podcast that solves a problem or helps people with something in life, create educational content related to your podcast theme. So, for example, we have the Global Wellness Headquarters. We have a theme, which is wellness, and we're creating books and videos and courses around those themes. Number 8, consulting services. One of my favorite things about a podcast is it's a great networking tool. It's a great way to meet people, and it's also a great way to demonstrate our own expertise. So whether you have a product-based company or a service-based company, one of the things I love to offer is a consulting option. Whatever your expertise is, people can come to you, get your guidance on the thing, maybe get some tips. We'll talk about how we can turn that into courses and material later. But consulting services are a great way. If you're really good at solving a problem, let people pay you to solve that problem. Now, book deals, this is probably my favorite. You're going to see a lot of bias. I am a ghostwriter and I love books. So one of the things you can do, and there's two options here. One is you can write a book based on your podcast content. The other is you can co-author a collaborative book with your guests. And both of those, they elevate your podcast, they elevate you, they also elevate your guest, and your guests would pay to participate. You could actually, I've seen people making between 5 and 10,000 on a collaborative book project, which not great money, but the thing is that you're making money while doing business development. So if you think about the cost of acquiring a customer is what most people do, you're looking at the revenue that you're earning while acquiring customers. So book deals are a great way to build relationships, a great way to promote your content, and a great way to put money in the bank for you and or your guests. And then number 10, I'm going to put this here. It's probably my favorite. It goes hand in hand with a book deal. But here's the thing. If you're a podcaster, you're an expert in your field, you have a subject that you're passionate about, you can get paid speaking fees to speak at events or conferences or things like that. So those are my first 10 ways to monetize a podcast. I'd love it if you've got some comments, questions, share it below. Otherwise, I'm going to go into my next set of 10. And I creatively called this 10 more ways to monetize your podcast. Again, for the record, keep the simplest things first, get those done, start to see revenue, and then you can scale and do other things. Number 11 is YouTube monetization. And one of the things I recommend, and I do, is you post your podcast videos on YouTube. And YouTube's partner program, to be eligible, you have to have at least 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 hours of total watch time. Both of those might feel like a big thing today, but if you put your content on YouTube and you optimize it over time, you will start to see the revenue. And by the way, in the short term, you can promote your product, services, what have you, as a way to earn revenue while you're waiting for the YouTube monetization to kick in. The second way to monetize your podcast, the second bonus way, is a paid newsletter. And there's lots of great tools out there to offer paid newsletters. And basically, you provide great content. It's got to be premium content and it's got to be exclusive, but people will pay to receive your updates. So think of this as really fancy show notes. Your show notes are available to the public, they're free, but behind the scenes, there's premium content and exclusive content. Now, for the record, I have not done this. I believe I'm apped out and I don't want to add another app to the world. But depending on the goals of your podcast and your audience, create an app that helps people consume your content, get benefits from your content. How could you make their lives easier through an app? Number 4 is membership sites, and personally, I think every business should have a membership site. Number one, you can use it as a client onboarding experience. Number two, you can use it to educate your clients. Number three, it helps you with retention. And number four, it gives you revenue. And again, it's like the newsletter. We want to offer exclusive content, high quality content, and access to a community. Because again, one of the things personally, I believe people become guests on my show because they want access to my community. I believe my community listens to my show because they want access to my experts. So if I bring all of that together as a community, we all win. For example, the Playground podcaster community. Number five is syndication rights. You can sell the rights for your podcast to be broadcast on other platforms or networks. We live in a world where people want good quality content and they're willing to pay for it. Personally, I don't do much with syndication rights because I'm focused on others, but it is a good way if you've got a good audience, you've got a good reach, you've got good feedback. Usually you can find other networks that will pay for your content. Now, in the previous section, we talked about consulting services. I believe everybody who has a podcast could offer coaching services as well. And basically think about what's the problem that your podcast helps somebody solve, what's the transformation your audience wants, and how could you build a coaching or mentoring around that. Now, the key is keep it within your area of expertise and be authentic. If you just show up and say, hey, everybody, here's what I'm working on, there are people in your audience that will pay just to be in the world with you. And one of the most valuable coaching experiences you can offer is accountability. So if somebody says to you in your coaching, today I'm going to do this, tomorrow you reach out to them and say, hey, just checking in, did you finish the thing you promised to do yesterday? That level of accountability is huge, and bonus marks if you can build that into a community setting. Now, I talked a little bit about advertising before, but really truly, if your content helps the audience of a specific corporate brand, consider a partnership. Get the large companies to provide some brand promotion, sponsorship dollars. Again, let's say your podcast is about cats. I guarantee there's somebody out there who makes a lot of money off of people owning cats. You could do a partnership. Again, this episode brought to you by Purina Cat Chow or whatever. Think about the brands that you recommend anyways, and how could you help them? How could you add value to them? Now, again, I say this a lot. This is one of my least favorite, dynamic ad insertion. A lot of people do this. They use technology to get their podcast episodes commercialized through ads. That to me is kind of like you're chasing pennies. And what I mean by that is if a sponsor makes money off of their ad, they're willing to pay you a small fraction of what they make in order to keep that ad running. You're better off to put in your own ads or ads of businesses you support. You could promote your own coaching, things like that. I'm not ruling it out, but to see that typically they pay you per thousand in your audience. So for dynamic ads, you need to have a bigger audience quickly. Number 9 is creating a paid community or forum. And again, this is a lot like community groups, but basically what's different here is you have a customized community and people are vetted and screened, and those who pay to play get to have access to the community. Again, this is a little like having, you know, FAQs. You can have VIP events, things like that. I can't stress enough. I love the power of community. So community might be a little more rich, like live events where you're engaging with people, or a forum is more just a place for people to come together and get to know each other. And number 10 on this list is licensing content. And basically, you can license your content for use by other media or platforms. So maybe you want to put your content on different platforms, you can charge people a licensing fee. So, for example, with Cashflow Club, I have an option where somebody can license my material and they're allowed to use my material subject to the terms of that licensing. So that's my 10 more ways to monetize your podcast. Let's move on to my 10 best ways to monetize a podcast. Now, I know at the beginning I promised 30. I'm sure I've given you some ideas and tips. There might be a little bit of overlap on this slide because these are my top. So I'm actually going to go a little bit deeper on some of these. But one of the best ways to monetize a podcast is to charge a fee to somebody who wants to be a guest on your podcast. What this does is, number one, it lets your guests know you're serious. Number two, it helps you cover production. So you've got some revenue up front. Most podcasts, the way it's done, as a podcaster, I cover everything. I pay for the production, I pay for all of the platform, everything. I do all the work to build the community. And then my guests, they're bringing me content and I have to wait and figure out how to monetize. Whereas if your podcast is successful, it's got a good audience, people will pay as guest appearances. And if you don't know where to start, look at the sponsors, look at people that naturally would resonate with your community. For example, if your podcast is about golf, you would have golf fitters, people who help people select golf clubs. You'd have them as a guest and they'd happily pay to be on the show. Now, to be clear, they're paying to be on the show. They're not paying for ongoing merchandising or things like that. And by the way, if you have a good affiliate, they might be willing to pay you to be on the show and offer you affiliate fees going forward. Now, we touched on events. I'm a really big fan of webinars and virtual events. And the reason I like them is they're easy to manage, easy to maintain, easy to set up, very low cost, very high reward. So as an example, if you have we have a wellness theme, we could teach how to implement one of our 9 elements of holistic wellness. We could charge people a nominal fee to attend the workshop or the webinar or the online event. And if we do a deep dive, we can charge more. So rule of thumb, if you're doing a webinar and you're selling something, the webinar is free and you're going to offer some value so that people buy the something. But if you're teaching a workshop where you're teaching them how to do a thing, then you can charge upfront for that. Now, number 3 is native advertising. We talked about generic advertising before, but for example, you might create custom branded content or episodes sponsored by a brand. And just to be really, really clear, for me, I'd rather support my own brand than someone else's. So for example, I might create an advertisement for a coaching program I'm working on. I might create an advertising program for a book I've written. Number 4, I'm going to use ebooks and digital products, but I'm also going to include books in here. Again, it's easy to create a digital product or an ebook, whether it's a workshop, it's a workbook, a journal, and then you can sell the digital product so that people can instantly download. Now, I take it a step further. I like physical products that someone else delivers. So for me, I like to create books, workbooks, journals, and link it, put it up on Amazon, publish it, link it to my site, and again, do commercials for it within my content so that I can make some money off of it. And something that's often overlooked is templates or checklists. People like easy buttons. So if you can show them an easy way to do something, they're going to love you for it. Now, number 5 is brand partnerships. We've talked about that before. I believe in the concept of key strategic partners. And what I love to do is identify the brands that most resonate with my audience, and then I find ways to add value to them, introducing them to people in my audience. The secret is a brand. If you've got a salesperson or a representative, their entire job is to promote the brand. So if you can show them ways that you promoting them adds value, they will find ways to work with you long term. And the most common brand partnership I've seen over time is you promote their stuff, they send you free samples so that you can, promote it. There's a lot of unboxing videos out there. People love to watch somebody. There was one I saw where the company does $10,000 pairs of trainers, mostly basketball shoes, I think, and they have celebrities who they record them unboxing their custom $10,000 pair of shoes, and they love seeing the authentic reaction when the box is open for the first time. So think about how you can promote your sponsors even before they become your sponsors. Now, collaborative books is a slightly different thing than regular books. And basically, as an example, a collaborative book might be me plus 9 of my guests. Each guest contributes a chapter. So together we have a 10-chapter book on a theme that we can then all promote to my audience, their audience. Basically, people pay to be part of the collaborative book, but also people pay to buy the book, and those two activities generate more interest in the book and thus your podcast or other thing. I believe the world needs more masterminds, and I think podcasting is really truly fertile ground, because if I think about it for more than half a second, a podcast is about a topic that people are interested in and they want to learn more about it. So the most simple mastermind is, you can have a group discussion. What did you think of the last episode? What were your key takeaways? How does that apply to you? A mastermind is really easy to launch, and it's a really powerful tool for transformation. So, for example, if your podcast is about reversing or living with a disease, have a mastermind and include experts who work in that field to eradicate or help people with that disease. They want to eradicate the disease or they want to help people. The other option is you have a community of people with the disease, and the long-term people who know their way in and out and around the disease, they share their practical advice to people who are just getting started. Now, that's not the only form of mastermind, but really, truly, a mastermind can be one of three things. One, it's a place where you learn something for yourself. Two, it's a place where you teach others. And three, it's a place where you build a community that gets you clients. So a mastermind is very, very versatile. It's very low cost, especially if you run it online, and it's high impact for both you and your audience. And by the way, as you grow your mastermind, it builds relationships with sponsors, which brings in other paths to money for your podcast. Now, I talked about webinars and virtual events. I'm going to put workshops separately. And my definition, a webinar is typically, it's 60 minutes or less. And there's the understanding that I'm going to show you something and you're going to want to buy the something at the end. A workshop, on the other hand, there's no selling involved. It is, I'm going to teach you how to do this thing. So for example, I might have a webinar promoting a course I've created on how to play the ukulele. People will come and maybe they sign up for my ukulele course, maybe they don't, but that's the transaction is, I'm going to sell you something, you either buy it or don't, but as long as we both know that's what it is, that's fine. Now, workshop, here's the secret. If I wanted to teach somebody how to play the ukulele, I'd break it down into my top 3 things, and I'd spend roughly 30 minutes each on those top 3 things and sell the workshop for $90. So it's a 90-minute workshop, $90, and I have to deliver on the promise. So the promise is more or less by the end of the 90 minutes, you will know how to do A, B, and C. So again, I'm not saying I'm going to help you be prolific as a ukulele player, but in 90 minutes, I'm going to give you the 3 fundamental foundational pieces so that you can get started. Now, I don't talk about this as much as I used to, but strategic partnerships, the simple way to think about this is who else reaches your clients. So I'm going to use a really example. My friend Pete and I, we talk about the dog moment. If you are a dog walker, the fundamental thing for somebody to be a good strategic partner, first of all, to be a great client, is they have to have a dog. If they don't have a dog, they're not a prospect of yours, they're not in your world, they don't know you exist, they don't care. And the worst thing you can do is try to convince them, hey, come in here and I'm going to give you a dog and then you can buy my product or service. Wrong approach. And by the way, that's what most marketing does. What we're going to do with strategic partners is we're going to state our underlying assumption that people must love dogs. Therefore, if you're a dog walker, your strategic partners are people who also make money off of the dog space. So people who sell food, people who sell wellness and nutrition, the material, the leads, um, the clothing, whatever paraphernalia, the toys, grooming, veterinarian. Think about all the businesses that serve your audience. And those people, by the way, make great guests because they make money off the dog industry. They're going to know the dog industry really well, but they're also going to have something of interest for the dog community. Now, don't be too literal. I'm not saying you should all start a podcast on dogs. What I'm saying is for your strategic partners, figure out who else makes money serving your audience. And how do you put those people in front of your audience? And how do you grow your audience through supporting your strategic partners? And then the final thing, networking. My podcast, believe it or not, is a networking tool. It is not the product itself, it is just the tool. And so one of the things I do is I build my network. I go out there, I meet my strategic partners, I grow my audience. And what I do is when the time is right and when it serves all parties involved, both the guest, my audience, and myself, I'll connect people. And you do that naturally with your podcast anyways, but here's the thing. If you want to win over a potential sponsor or if you want to monetize your business, network with intention, know who you want to meet, why you want to meet them, what you're going to do once you meet them, and through that, you can create a network where when you need something, you can reach out and you spend a lot of your time thinking, how do I add value to that network so that when you need them, they know who you are and they're happy to collaborate with you. So those are my top 30 picks for ways to monetize a podcast. And yes, I know some of them are a little bit duplicated. I hope the extra coverage stresses to you exactly how important I think they are. I look forward to your comments, questions below. Thank you.